This evening, I am super stoked to dive into a conversation with Jimmy Lowery. Jimmy is the founder and CEO of Simplora, an AI native meeting workspace designed to help professionals get more value from every conversation. After recognizing that traditional meeting tools were capturing conversations, but doing little to help people prepare, think, or follow through, Jimmy and his team made a bold bet to create a platform that proactively supports users before, during, and after every meeting. In this episode, we explore the story behind Simplora, what it takes to lead through ambiguity as a founder, and why Jimmy believes the future of work is all about creating intelligent systems that help people make better decisions and execute with greater clarity. So, without further ado, welcome, Jimmy. Excited to have you.
Thank you for having me, Aaron. Great to be on.
Well, let's kick this off. Tell us a little bit about the origin story of Simplora. What problem does the product solve?
It's a great question, and it's a story that's evolved over time. So, the genesis of the idea was that I was actually having a conversation with a few friends, and I realized during that conversation that they were using certain language that I was just not familiar with. And I started to think to myself, I'm like, I've sat in meetings before where I felt like the conversation was moving very quickly. Certain
Mm.
people are using certain specialized jargon or language or terms or acronyms that I just wasn't familiar with. And I realized that's been an experience I've had throughout my life. And
Mm.
so, in that moment of having the conversation with my friends, I sort of asked myself, what if I was capable of understanding what they were saying as they were talking and having the tools sort of right there in front of me that helped explain some complex concept that they were describing or helped define an acronym that they had just mentioned? And that was the sort of lightning in the bottle moment that has now kind of grown into what all that Simplora is today, which has gone through its own iterations and pivots as we've been in market. But essentially, the origin stemmed from the fact that conversations can be chaotic. And when you're having a back and forth or you're talking with a group of people, that exchange of language and ideas, it can range all over the place. And so the sort of question became, is it possible for our software and our meeting tools or our meeting offerings to be able to actually help give us the proper support and assistance during a conversation so that we can better navigate it and be more informed? So that was the origin story, but yeah, Simplora has evolved a long way since then.
The idea is genius. I think aside from just being more informed, I think people being more present in a conversation. Yeah, I think about times where I've been struggling to keep up, or maybe there's been some jargon that I don't understand, and I'm off, on my phone Googling, or, these days like GPTing, what does this
Yeah.
mean? And trying to keep up. And so not having that distraction, I think, goes a long way to a richer conversation for sure. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about, like, you mentioned in our last conversation that you've had to really respond fast to feedback from the market or kind of noticing windows of opportunity. Tell us a little bit about your experience there while you built Simplora, and kind of what it feels like as a founder to lead through those moments.
Yeah. So, going back to our genesis, our origin story, we started in a market in which we were trying to bring a kind of a solution that was providing a sort of learning and development type of value.
Mhm.
And it was it was really kind of aimed towards this idea of how do we give someone the ability to comprehend or learn from this meeting that they're currently in. And as we put the product into market and started to collect feedback, what we quickly realized is that, for one, HR departments and teams who are the traditional buyers for learning and development solutions are notoriously underfunded. And
Mhm.
so they don't typically take up a large portion of the budget that is generally allocated across departments. They get a small sliver of that department in sort of these kind of like larger organizations that do support HR functions. And so we started talking with those who worked in these HR teams, and we would hear like, okay, well, we only have so much budget, and so we really have to figure out how to make this work. And so we were willing to figure that out. But then the second sort of layer there was that HR is also less likely to move quickly as it pertains to new software. And so they're just a little slower at times to adopt new software, especially if they feel as if the software that they have works. And so it has to go through kind of a lot of iterations to get the attention of kind of the HR buyers and those decision makers. And so, anyways, long story short, we quickly realized that the way we were positioning our product as a learning and development solution and the market we were attempting to go after, that being more of HR, it just wasn't working. And I think the kind of the learning opportunity there was like, how do we ensure that we're not falling in love with the assumptions that we had going into this, right? How do we ensure that if we're receiving certain signals from the market, that we can actually take those signals and act upon those signals? So thinking of those as opportunities to learn and then to kind of move faster and move swiftly if need be. And that even means like we have to make an uncomfortable decision to pivot or to kind of go a different direction. And that is where we ended up. And so we actually shifted from a sort of real-time comprehension based meeting solution to what we are today, which is a meeting workspace that helps equip professionals with intelligence throughout the full meeting life cycle. So before their meetings, they get advanced meeting preparation with context about prior conversations and insights about the participants they're meeting with. During the conversation, they've got this real-time proactive intelligence that's not only defining acronyms that are being used, but it's also taking action for them during that call. A prime example that I love and a lot of our customers love is our real-time fact checker. So if someone makes a claim during a meeting, the real-time proactive fact checker will actually go out and use publicly verifiable data to fact check what was just said. And so we have this real-time intelligence that's just become way more robust, way more valuable for the day-to-day professional, just based on us being in the market and hearing that feedback. And then after calls, you get all of your meeting notes like you would a traditional meeting note taker, but we built in the actual layer to allow you to execute upon those action items. And so you can activate agents that will send that email or update that CRM or do a multi-step kind of workflow and send an email, update a project tracker, and take that next step, whatever needs to happen. And then you can analyze all of your conversations. So all of those meetings that you have across all of the different teams that you're talking with, customers, you can analyze all of those in one place. And so as you can tell, that has grown from where we started. And that's required growing pains all the while.
I am just envisioning using your product, and I would love to experience it because it sounds actually like some really good software that we use specific to interviewing, of like preparing before, having the context during and then after. But to have that for any interaction, I think is really powerful. I think back to being inside corporate America, and you're so scheduled, especially once you move into a leadership sort of scope. You are just running from one meeting to the next. And I can't even tell you how many times I'd wander into a meeting and I'm like, I don't remember why I'm here. I'm not sure if I knew in the first place. And you're playing some catch up. And I think you're solving some real problems there. But I want to pick into something you mentioned, which was the bit about growing pains. And you've got, it's not just you at Simplora, you've got a team around you. And so tell me a little bit about as a founder and you're kind of leading through these inflection points or maybe even pivot points in the product development and the go-to-market plan, how do you kind of ensure that everybody is on the same page and bought in when change is maybe uncomfortable?
So my perspective on this is that as the founder of a company or the CEO, someone who sits in a leadership position, one of your main goals is to constantly cast a vision, right? So, and that vision may evolve. It may change. It may not just be, I have this one specific vision that has this one specific end state. It may be something that's like, hey, here's the vision for what we're working towards in this season. And, here's what we're rallying around because this is what we're looking to bring to life. And constantly casting that vision sort of it gives your team the ability to have the picture of kind of where they're going. And then it gets buy-in because ideally, right, or hopefully they're able to kind of contribute their perspective on that vision. And you're able to sharpen one another and sort of work towards something that you're collectively bought in on. And so every time we've gone through these pivots or shifts as a company, I am going to our team and I am saying like, hey, here's kind of where we've been at. Here's what we've learned. And based on what we've learned, here's what we're planning on doing next.
Mhm.
Here's the vision of where we're headed based on this data that we now have that's given us this insight or this new perspective that we didn't previously have. But now that we do have it, here's kind of what that goal looks like, and here's how that goal kind of fits into this mission that we have. And then here's the vision for what we're looking to accomplish based on that goal or those objectives and our overall mission. But I think casting visions extremely important as a founder, as a leader, and it's okay that your objectives change and the way that vision looks changes. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of communicating it, over communicating it, and proactively communicating it, and allowing your team to kind of ask questions, propose ideas, propose pushback, right? And that is a way of sharpening one another, making sure you're actually all in agreement, or even if you're not in agreement, you're committed, right? So, disagree, but commit. And so it's, hey, we're committed to this vision. Now let's see it through.
My favorite part about what you said was, here's the vision for this season. And I think if you reinforce that over and over again, people maybe get more comfortable with change and they're expecting things to change rather than maybe settling into this is sort of what we'll work on forever and it
Yeah.
will be the same.
Yeah. And
So we may have to borrow that one. That's a really great framing.
yeah. And I want to add to that, right? Context helps here. So we're an early stage startup, we're
Mm.
pre seed startup, post revenue, right? But we are just by nature going to be working in an environment that comes along with a lot of ambiguity. And it does require the type of personality who is adaptable and understands that there's going to be that level of ambiguity and be those changes that could happen very swiftly and rapidly. And we all need to sort of understand that and then be able to kind of move forward from that. Whereas if you're in a larger organization, that change in itself, right? There's a whole sort of philosophy behind it, change management, and
Yeah.
it is required, and it is treated with, I think, a different level of intentionality within a larger organization. But being in a smaller company, the personalities and the characters that are working in these types of startups and these types of environments, they're a little more willing to adapt and move
Mhm.
quickly, break things, disrupt, versus larger organizations. Folks are a little bit slower to change.
Yeah. An important distinction. I think the way you handle it has to look different because the way the company operates is so different. And so what is next for Simplora in the next season? What is the team focused on?
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to casting vision, right? So I'll share a little about where we're headed. I'd say broadly, our goal is to become, I think is a cliche phrase, but I like it. It helps communicate what we're doing, which is becoming the operating system for your meetings.
Mm.
So we very much see Simplora as expanding into this workspace that truly assists and supports throughout the full meeting life cycle for all of the various meeting based capabilities and functionalities that you would need for any given virtual or in person meeting. And the kind of driving philosophy behind it is that we see meetings as containing the richest source of context within any company. All of your meetings contain the most up to date context. And what
Mhm.
traditionally happens is that you gather and scatter. So all of that context is sort of coming together within the meeting, and then it's being scattered into all of your systems, and it's sort of being spread out from one place to the next. And so our philosophy is that within the kind of the moment of gathering and everything that surrounds it, it should be way more intelligent and it should be way more autonomous. And
Mhm.
so how do we build out this operating system for your meetings to make it more intelligent and more autonomous and to pretty much collapse what has effectively happened, which is a kind of sprawl of all of these different tools that are kind of really only serving as point solutions for different stages of your
Mm.
meeting. And so you kind of have certain tools you use to help you prepare, and then you
Yeah.
have a certain place that you meet, but then you might have brought on another, different tool for your notes, and then use a totally different tool to take action on your notes or
Yeah.
to analyze your notes. And so how do we eliminate that and become the one place that people go for all things meetings?
Yeah, that's an ambitious goal, but I think
It is.
one that a lot of people would get pretty excited about. The number of tabs that are open that I'm like trying to like pick through at
Yeah.
any given moment is kind of wild. So very excited to follow along as that comes to life. What this kind of leads me to just thinking about like the broader market today. And there's I think almost like a gold rush, if you will, of companies trying to build in the AI product space, and tons of noise, of course, since the barrier to entry has never been lower, really. Tell me a little bit about what it feels like to compete in that space right now.
Yeah. So the market is moving very swiftly, very quickly. We see, of course, every day in tech and AI that there's some new innovation, new way of working, a new model has dropped, new tech that's supposed to be game changing. And in many ways, it's exciting, but in a lot of other ways, it creates noise. And the difficulty is not necessarily, I think, on my end as a founder to sift through that noise as much as it's on the end of our consumer who is looking to discern what's legitimate, what's not, what is just hype and hearsay or good marketing, and what's something that's actually working and actually valuable and actually going to kind of 10x our initiatives or our goals or make us more effective, more productive, more efficient, whatever. And so the way that we stand out is we build trust. So we are focused on being a trustworthy solution first and foremost. A lot of that has to do with, me as the founder being a little more public, a little more available, right? I'm not totally removed from the company itself, but I'm also not trying to be the company, right? I want the company to be able to stand on its own two legs. But because I've built up trust in my circle, that does extend then to our company and what we're doing. And so in order to stand out, we have to establish trust in the solution and its reliability and its value. And I have to then reinforce that. At the same time, we also have to pay attention to our brand and how our
Mm.
brand is being represented. And so, we make a conscious effort to kind of pay attention to how we are presenting ourselves in the market so that it doesn't just look like AI slop. It looks like a company that, there's a team who is thinking intentionally about these decisions and about what we're creating and we're producing and we're putting out there. And so we're focused on like establishing trust and then our brand identity, and everything else past that is of course going to come down to distribution, marketing. But even then, let's say you start to build up a user base like we have, you still have to have a good product that delivers upon what you've promised. And it
Mhm.
actually has to solve a true pain point or problem. And we put a lot of time and love into crafting our product in a way that feels simple and intuitive and effortless. And that helps kind of reinforce that sense of like, okay, this is a solution I can trust and rely on. That helps generate word of mouth. That helps generate introductions. And so that even helps on the distribution and marketing side. But there's a lot of creative ways to stand out from a marketing perspective. But I
Mm.
think most importantly, it's going to come down to trust overall. If you want to be a solution people adopt and use long term, and the way you
Yeah.
represent your brand, and then just how effective your product truly is.
It's an interesting point that you make about just the brand of the founder and the CEO and how that sets the tone and sort of complements the company brand. I think about even 10 years ago, unless you were talking about a really well-known organization, you didn't know who the founder was,
Yeah.
right? Like and you probably didn't care. But I think there's so much more interest and curiosity today and sort of capitalizing on that, putting yourself out there and allowing people to see you for the human you are beyond just the leader and builder that you are is genius. And so I want to, on that note, maybe dig in a little bit and talk more about you and your life because you are not just a founder and a builder, but you are a husband and father. You have a family around you. And so tell us a little bit about what it's like to sort of balance the passion for building and growing your company with prioritizing your family first in this season.
One of the most difficult things I've ever done in my entire life. And I've done some difficult things. I could say this, my faith is, for one, where I derive my purpose. And that then carries into how I steward my family and my wife, my daughter. They're just the greatest sources of joy in what can feel like a world of chaos and uncertainty. They are the reason, right, why I get up with this drive and this ambition and this determination, because I want to, yes, build a better future for them, but I also want to set a model, an example of what is possible, especially for our daughter.
Hmm.
So that means at times having to take risks and having to do something that comes along with a lot of uncertainty. But I truly wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for the support of my wife,
Hmm.
who is understanding of that. And even if at times there is that sort of like, okay, well, what are we going to do if this doesn't work out, or if that doesn't go the way we planned? Even though there are those conversations, there's still that support and there's still that understanding of like, hey, even if this doesn't work out as we've planned, that's okay. Like, we're giving this a shot to see what's possible. And that's going to help kind of reinforce to our daughter over time as well that she can have a vision for something and she can tackle that vision and kind of throw everything she's got at it. And we'll be there to support her in that. Right. And so building a business and then raising a family, at times competing priorities. And so the business may need to come secondary to the family, right? And that is just kind of the way that it has to go. But within both of these endeavors, it's actually developing my character, right? So I am being sharpened, I'm being refined because I'm sitting within that kind of that pressure. I'm sitting within that tension of, how do I steward my family well? And then how do I build this business from zero? How do I actually create something that didn't exist before? And then at the same time, I'm raising uh, our young daughter and I'm stewarding my family. And so it definitely comes with a tension that has to be balanced. And I'm still every day looking to strike that balance and make sure I am stewarding both well. And it's a little bit of an art and a science, Aaron.
Liked what you said though about building character. And I can relate to, some of the feelings and, tension points. I've got two little girls myself. They're 2 and 4. And so, that's come up, certainly in my experience before too. But one thing I'm kind of curious about, you mentioned, just kind of being sharpened on both ends, and, being a founder and leader probably makes you a better steward for your family. And then, being a husband and father makes you a sharper leader. Tell me a little bit about that piece. How do you think being a husband, father, steward of your family sharpens you as a leader for your organization?
So something that I think any parent runs into as soon as they have children is all of the time that they had previously is gone. So whatever free time you thought you had before, you did have before, let's just say that's gone, right? And what that then means is that the time that you do have, it has to be so much more purposeful and intentional. And there has to be, at many times, a sense of urgency within whatever it is that you're doing so that you can say, okay, I am going to kind of steward what I'm doing right now and be present within that. I'm going to have this family time. I'm going to enjoy that. And then I'm going to kind of have this time where I'm going to work on the business. And then within this business, okay, I have this much time to do these things. That's as much time as I've got. And then I'm going and taking care of the family or doing these family things, community things, what have you. And so it's like, how do I be very intentional about my time? And I think any founder, any business leader understands that we have a limited amount of time, and the way that we prioritize that time is really what's important because we have the same exact amount of time, but how are we using that time? And I would say, as a father, as a husband, um, understanding how to prioritize my time in work, right? Which has really been derived from having only so much time in a day. And how do I prioritize and really focus on what's most important when I am working? It's made me so much more, I'd say, like intentional and dialed in to what I do when I'm kind of gearing up to work and when I'm going throughout my day. Whereas previously, it kind of just felt like I had all the time in the world and could just work however long and whichever hours. But now I enjoy the sleep that I can get when I can get it. I'll take it. And so it definitely has forced more intentionality, more yeah, more time, just being more focused on how I prioritize my time.
Do you ever look back and just laugh at how you thought you were tired before from time to time?
I think I exist in a perpetual state of tired at this point, so I don't even know what anything outside that looks like.
And remind me, your daughter's young. How old is your daughter?
She just turned 14 months on the
Oh,
6th.
wow. Yeah.
Uh,
So she is so small. What do you hope for her in terms of, as she watches, you and your wife kind of lead through this build and this experience? What do you hope that she observes and takes away from that?
It's a great question. Yeah. So I would say that, we talk a lot about instilling work ethic in our children and wanting our children to understand the sort of skills or the character traits that are necessary to be someone who's kind of driven. And I think those are important, but I actually would prefer to model more of a sort of well-rounded father who, is capable of, taking care of his family, building and nurturing community and a spiritual life, and also running and leading a business. And for her to see that, it's possible to be well-rounded, it's possible to properly steward the areas of our lives that are important to steward and to nurture. And it's not just this like 24/7 hustle culture, like grind. I don't have this like desire for her to be like gonna go and do these crazy work things. And like, that's not my intention as much as I would say like her seeing a model of like just taking care of what's in front of you. And yeah, that may mean taking risks in something like work or your profession, pursuing something and being willing to kind of chase that dream. But that to me is all a part of being well rounded. And so you can also accomplish that, right? Even if you work a kind of traditional like corporate job or a 9 to 5, like whatever, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to be well rounded or to even have a strong work ethic. And so that I would say is what I hope to be able to instill in her, what we talk about as a family, and that most importantly, her faith, but also understanding that she can be well rounded in these areas of life.
I think that as a woman, I think many other women probably have had a similar experience of wondering, can I have both a career and a family? And inspiring your daughter to know that she can and she can do it really well. Maybe not perfectly all the time, but really well, generally speaking. And to be successful is probably the biggest gift that you could give her in modeling that with your family. So thank you so much for sharing. I think there's some really good takeaways for other founders or leaders who might be grappling with just some of the challenges that we were talking about earlier of spinning all the plates and balancing those priorities. And so I think I'm going to shift us into the last portion of the conversation here, which is to talk a little bit about the future of work. I think that, some of the earlier conversation about Simplora has me thinking about what this looks like and where we go from here, which I think we both agree we're getting there fast wherever it is. And so a lot of discussion about what the future workforce looks and feels like with respect to humans and agents working alongside one another. What do you think this will look or feel like, say, in 10 years? Any big bets that you would share with us?
Feel like we are sort of living this future that was once envisioned just a few years ago, which is that we have now autonomous agents, right? Where did that name come from? But we have autonomous agents that can literally execute our work for us. And this is really profound and extremely early. And so I think that we'll only see a continued evolution of that technology, meaning having these specialized AI agents that are capable of doing the work for us, which will mean that, especially for knowledge workers, right? It'll mean that our work will consist of managing these agents
Mm.
more than it's necessarily managing a specific project or a specific task. We'll oversee the AI that will be actually doing those projects and doing those tasks. And so there is, of course, I think, common or maybe let's say understandable debate of whether or not AI is taking jobs or creating jobs. My take on it is that it's doing both simultaneously,
Mhm.
and maybe we'll net out with it creating more opportunities at the end of the day, but we're going to see a fluctuation either way. And I do think that there will always be the need to have human in the loop for specific types of companies and specific types of roles, but there will be others that can just be totally automated and will be replaced by AI and AI agents and even whatever maybe evolution that comes after AI agents, right? And so I think that we are still very early in that overall cycle, but I do expect that to just continue to ramp up over time.
Yeah.
And my take on this is that, as we're building out this meeting workspace, how do we actually lead that, right? How do we bring about that technological innovation within what it is that we're doing? And we're not just kind of following what's already happened, but we're setting the pace for what is going to happen. And so we're constantly thinking about, even as an early stage startup, like, how do we like push what's possible with what currently exists so that we can experience breakthrough that others haven't yet experienced yet, because we are kind of on the cutting edge of this technology, and we're pulling from these different fields and these different subjects and this knowledge, and we're bringing it all together with this vision. And that means, like, all right, what are we able to create and bring into the world that didn't previously exist, and kind of using these tools and this technology at our disposal all the while.
Mhm.
So that's a very, very, I'd say, generic take on where we'll be in 10 years, but just the kind of the trajectory that we're currently on with AI agents and the way we're already starting to see knowledge work evolving.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and it'll probably be here even faster than that. That's my big bet. We might be there in a couple of years. And I think it's exciting and a little scary at the same time. What is your take on preparation for that? So as a leader, if you'll leave us with a couple of kind of words of advice, if you will, what should people be doing now to prepare themselves to adapt quickly and to be successful in the world that is to come?
Yeah, so a lot of it starts with culture, and that too can be vague, but how do you instill into your operating dynamics the way that your team thinks, the values that you have? How do you instill a culture of curiosity, willingness to try, willingness to experiment, a adaptability? Like, how do you instill that into the fabric of your team and of your company? But I also think that really what it comes down to is, like, what problem are you solving? I do think that there is a problem with, like, AI for AI's sake. And I think that those tools and those solutions are going to burn out just as quickly as they were lit.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not solving a real problem, then they're just not going to have the kind of sustaining power. They're not going to have the oxygen that's needed for them to breathe. As far as, like, kind of adaptability and, like, how do you be proactive or prepare for what is to come, what the future looks like? Well, the question should always be like, what problem are we solving, right? Or what are we doing that is truly bringing a differentiated value to our audience, or who we perceive our audience to be? And how do we use the technology, the tools that we have to solve that problem? And I think that if you're asking yourself that question, then you're going to stay ahead of the curve, because you're going to be constantly asking, like, what's the problem that we're solving here? What's our market saying about this? What's our customer saying about this? Like, how do we tackle this problem for them? And what are the ways that we can do that using the tools that we're aware of and the data that we have, right? And then you just have to operate kind of based on where you're at and the data that you do have. And then hopefully, if you have the kind of the culture, the willingness to adapt or to shift if things don't seem to be working, then you can continue to play that game. But over time, you're solving these problems that the like people actually have, and you're bringing them a value that others aren't, who are just shipping cool AI stuff. But it's like, what good is that going to do me at the end of the day? You know.
Yeah.
So I think it comes back to that. And the last piece I'll say on that is I think as a leader, as someone who oversees a team, you have direct reports, you're a manager, like whatever your position might be, the ideal environment is one in which you equip the people who work under you or alongside you to do their best work. And at times, what that like truly comes back to is trust. And the reason I say that is because I think it could be too easy to want to dictate certain tools or technologies that individual or team should use. But if you start with the goal and you say, here's what we're looking to accomplish, right? Even here's our vision. And it's like, how can we get there, right? Like, what are we able to do to get there? And you trust your team to kind of bring together the right technologies and the tools. And of course, you can influence and you can speak into and bring those suggestions and bring those recommendations. But it's like, how do you trust your team to be able to truly like execute upon the plan? And sometimes that may not mean like, I had this AI strategy and we were going to use this one specific tool to accomplish this one specific thing, where it's like, well, hey, this tool that just came out could actually accomplish what we're looking to accomplish 10 times faster and with way higher quality. So is there a willingness to try that out? And do you trust your team to be able to try a solution like that out? Or is it too locked down? Is it too rigid? And so when we when we talk about adaptability, there are kind of these layers to it. What problems are you solving? What's your actual goal that you're trying to accomplish? Have you instilled the culture within your team that you trust them and you've given them the reins to be able to experiment and be curious and adapt? And it's like bringing all of that together, just a few ways to try to stay relevant in today's market.
I love that. I think that a reminder about just leadership 101 concepts, and none of that goes away because of the workforce transformation that we're jumping into or that has already begun. It actually is more important. And so it's less about, going and doing AI and more about anchoring everyone to the goal, helping them get there, making them feel safe. And that's what's going to breed your next round of innovation. So thank you for kind of framing that. I think it's a really great reminder for a lot of leaders out there. So, Jimmy, thank you so much for the conversation. I enjoyed when we first met. I really enjoyed getting to pick your brain today and looking forward to following your continued success as you scale Simplora. If any listeners would like to learn more about you or your company, where can they find you?
Absolutely. You can search for me on LinkedIn, Jimmy Lowery Jr., or you can look up Simplora, simplora.ai, and you can see everything that we've got going on those two different channels.
Fabulous. Well, until next time, Jimmy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it.